right on there, we want to place membership.
That's generally the way, that's about as formal as we get, okay?
You know when my sister goes to church in Rome, the preacher preaches and then they do a closing prayer. They don't do an invitation.
Yeah.
Understand that. I'm doing good.
They don't do any invitation?
No, they don't do the
Really?
invitation. It's north of Fort Worth. It's a small congregation. She said the preacher calls everybody every Saturday and talks to everybody. But they don't do the invitation song. I said, that just doesn't.
When I got out,
That just feels odd, yeah. Now, I
Go
don't,
scriptural.
I don't do that in between every verse, you know, the old,
Talking.
yeah, wear
Come
it
on
out.
down.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
I don't think I've ever been in where they've
Fred
done
Bandy used to do that.
Did he?
So, yeah, Fred Bandy.
Well, that's right. He would stop us.
So,
I've been stopped, leave there on, yeah.
he led singing at Venus for so many
We
years.
go
He's
jumping.
ready to step up.
You know what?
Voice is given away.
Everything go
I
yet?
can't focus on the songbook. I
Oh,
start drifting and so I don't know all the words, so then somebody else has to carry it while I'm trying to catch up.
find where you are. That's okay. There's a reason I preach. Because you don't want me reading singing. They tried to teach us and preach us.
Yeah. Well, you have to fundamentals.
What they did
It's just, that's not your skill.
It is not my skill. And I will start a song too high, too low, never on it.
He said he was ready to go back to bass.
Oh, okay,
And I'm
good.
ready to be able to sing the soprano, not jump to the alto to cover the point. It's not-
Because I lead all different kinds of songs, and so sometimes I have to twist faith with the bass lead and the chorus.
Right.
And then other songs, well, she'd have to switch to alto because there was an alto lead,
There was
and
no
I
alto.
wanted
Somebody had
to
to
do-
do it.
and I wanted to do the song, so.
Well, that was, I'm glad you could do that. I'm
Might not
impressed.
have been pretty, but I love music and I'm singing.
I like to sing.
That
That part
I
I
like y'all have a lot of songs too.
I like the song selection. Hello, Ray.
And I like the song, I feel,
We like to, we try and do
She's gonna
trying
Andy's.
to meet
I don't know if
everybody.
Andy's monitor.
That's
Hey,
what
there
it
you
is.
go.
Older monitor and it
Okay?
records everything.
Yes, sir.
I'm old.
He has an easy name, Jim.
Junior samples.
Anyway,
Junior sample.
Oh, I like that even
I like
better.
that.
Now, the bad news is, I had a guy introduce himself one
there's
time.
two professionals.
John Wayne.
Yes, sir.
And that wasn't his name. And I'm
Two
telling you,
professionals.
I called him John Wayne.
And I know.
For the longest time, I just couldn't get past it. That's why she's carrying with us.
Bad or not.
That stuck on my head. Jim.
Jim.
Jim, oh, okay.
And I'm Karen.
And Karen.
Now tomorrow I may change it, you know.
It doesn't matter, it'll be about 6 weeks before I remember it.
They're still
Well,
practicing.
thankfully I'll have longer than that.
They're practicing, no, they're practicing. Well,
Yeah, but
Good names and associations, this is 3 years worth.
when we were worshiping in Burleson before they moved out wherever they're at now, they had all the members' pictures and names on the wall. I mean, it went all the way around.
That's
And
what
so when we were first there, that's what I do. We get there early, and I just start going to the picture with each one, name, face, name, face. So I had pretty much everybody memorized and at least knew by their face.
Yeah, but there, there would be a number on one.
What's the number? I don't have a number.
Now that's where you get those numbers across your chest and you turn this way, please.
Yeah, I look good in those pictures, I guess. I think I would. Just check it. What? Oh, there you are.
You're doing all good.
Yep.
Thanks, I was sure. Never heard of
wait
it.
on him.
I
They
do,
were
but I
in
was
state, they
busy.
said they played good, but
Karen, that's my grandson. Sorry.
they cried after they got through and they cried.
Kind of a small one.
That's sad. They get there though.
Yeah,
My daddy can do it.
that takes more coordination.
She can do everything.
Baseball,
Just use the side of your finger.
it's an exact same.
I think this was
Size of your finger. I just,
in longer.
that's what he said. I still have that translation.
Howdy, ma'am. Howdy.
Okay?
Chili?
Yes, I am. So I turned that heated seat on, I put this blanket on.
Hello, brother
I
Rick.
hear you.
Cover it up.
Donna's been all balled up, covered up, got her fuzzy house shoes on and whatnot, and a stinking fan running right beside her. It's a woman.
I didn't say that. I'll let you say that part.
I did.
Okay, trying it on the
That
front.
fan
Get
only
that.
goes. When the fan goes off, I let go.
I'm just not.
You just got in your way one time or something, but.
Well, yeah, that
I
happened.
think that's from years of working nights.
Oh, I bet it's gonna be a light crowd this evening. They got the ball games on.
Yeah.
This guy made it. I made it. How you
I've been
doing?
watching my phone.
Look at, yeah, I was gonna say, look at the corner of that screen, he probably
Well,
has
I
it
won't be
covered.
on here. I'll be watching Warren on this and my phone will be here.
You know, it's funny. You may not follow baseball, but when it's a hometown event, it doesn't matter what it is. Then everybody rallies. It's good. It's really a good
A
event.
lot of bandwagoners. That's all.
But it does. It kind of brings everybody together for at least short term. All right.
You just need to finish it. Unlike those last two.
Well, until that first era,
Good.
it really was good.
First year.
The first era that Arizona made.
Oh,
the first Arizona, because up to then,
I'm good, how are you?
pro against pro.
Turn the morning.
That's what I enjoy.
So I can relate.
It's just this little muscle that is going in so bad. It's in spasms. I don't know what.
So,
Old age?
I've been watching them since I was.
I'm sure that's what mine is. I wouldn't call yours old as that. Mine is old age. Late, very late. It's just like you said, it's a muscle.
It's just one little muscle.
And we've got a, I don't know what you call it. It's basically it's 10. It helps a lot. I'm just lazy and don't.
See ya. I like your jacket.
Thank you.
Even if you're not on two wheels.
Too
Not
cold.
today.
Had a feeling.
Not today.
Off her back.
I haven't got my winter, my cold weather here out anyway.
Wear them all the time.
I can ride down in this, but I need to get my gear out.
Just like
It is.
Jeff Maxwell,
Hi, nice to meet you.
my wife Judy.
Hi, Judy. Nice to meet you. I'll keep an eye on him. Okay?
We've met y'all before, I know we have.
Hi.
Judy? I know you have.
Sherry Martin.
I don't know that we've met
I don't think
before.
so. I was thinking, I'm so
We'll
sorry.
just go with it. This is Ricky.
I'm right
Yes,
here.
sir.
You are the,
Not bad.
It's not a circulation problem, it's just cold outside.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Short.
Well, yeah, sure. Feels good outside.
I've been out trimming trees all day. I'm just not a cold weather kind of guy.
Well, when we lived in Virginia, it snowed, I was always in shorts.
The water stay out.
Where?
In Virginia,
Eastern Shore.
It's
cold.
I know,
It
but
gets
I
really
was,
cold.
I was used to California weather, so that when I got there, it was like,
Okay. Well, to all those people that were complaining about the heat this summer, see, here it comes.
Yes. You didn't hear my country self saying that.
no, because I stained my whole porch, and it was nice, it was in the hundreds, but it dried real quick. That's what I liked about it.
Our pond is
It didn't take so long.
Children over to the railway.
Alan had pumped it out, we were gonna make it deeper. Didn't make it.
yeah, we were in talks with, or he was in talks with a guy today.
Not anymore.
So what'd you do with your day off?
Oh, then you were in there while I was getting people.
We did.
I parked in front of Subway because it's down there. People clean all
I
these
tried to
cars.
read, I get no sleep, so.
Tree legs down. I'm working.
Yes.
I didn't get back.
You all right there, Laura?
Oh,
yeah.
That's a quiet.
No, I didn't get a nap today.
Yes.
What happened now?
I need more.
Well, his back was well, well, this one, got dirty, I don't know.
I was on my 2 hours last night walking around giving out candy. I'm at it.
I've been feeling it full.
I'm doing great, how are you doing?
So far.
Yeah. They told him to get up and stretch his back and walk, don't just lay there. Yeah. You ain't going anywhere.
Well, Ron's already changed the clock, so can't use that clock.
I'm out walking here Sunday.
We just have to remember
No, you're
it's
out.
already been set ahead.
That's right. You can go back
Yeah.
to school Friday. but you
No,
can
it's
go
set back. It says it's 6 o'clock. Which means I've got 2 hours.
Need that extra hour.
Turn forward, fall back.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
The spring is hard. I can handle an extra hour of sleep. Boy, losing me is tough.
Taylor's texting me. Great granddaughter. We're at top work first.
Well, wave at my kids.
Go right back.
One on that side of the
I sprayed the stuff on it this morning, I took a shower and then I did it. And then after I quit, I took all the latest class.
I think you go to the restaurant.
I thought I was going to have to be scriptural tonight and teach from a chair. Boy, I'm telling you, I've got a catch in my back. It just will not let go. Doug, how would you like to lead us in prayer, please, sir? I said, Doug.
For the measure of health that we enjoy, for this opportunity to meet together with like-minded brethren, to study your word. And Father, we pray that you'll be with Warren as he directs our thoughts, that we might truly gain from a better understanding of your word. Father, direct us in the paths that we should go through your Spirit. Thank you for the relationship that we have with each other and with you through your sons. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We are in Acts, well, let's see. Yep, 21. I've got to erase my last mark, so I started to back up. I don't want to do that. Oh, I'm trying to toy with whether or not I need to apply for a Paul-type job, because it seems like one of the things that's required on his resume is stirring up a ruckus. I don't, what? I saw you looking at me.
You're going to apply for a full-time job?
A Paul-time job. Oh, man.
I misunderstood.
No wonder he was looking at me so funny. I thought, wait a minute. The Apostle Paul. P-A-U-L.
Oh, Paul.
You don't stir up a ruckus, go preach to Congress. Wow.
I did stir one up. Hey, that's good. I'm qualified now. Okay. But it didn't turn into a riot, so that part's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, brother. Okay.
For president.
No, please. No, thank you. Yeah. Then I'd have to live up there. No, thank you. No, thank you. We're down to verse 15. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the travel narrative. We spent some time with that last week. I want to look more at the events that happened. We talked about how Paul's left Asia, and he's made the sail all the way across the Mediterranean. He's landed over here at Caesarea. He's going up to Jerusalem, and that's where we're going to pick up. because I really want to look at that. Now, Paul has got a list. Let's see, where did it list them? Back at the beginning of chapter 20. Look at the names that are listed. And these aren't all the names, but Luke is counting. He's going through and he's saying, okay, here's our part of our traveling party. In chapter 20, let's see verse 4. You've got Sopater of Berea, and Aristarchus, and Secundus of the Thessalonians, and Gaius, and Timothy, and Tychicus, and Trophimus, and we understand Luke because he's talking about we all of this time, and there might have been some others as well. So when he gets back to Caesarea and then goes up to Jerusalem, you're talking about a pretty significant group of companions. And one of the reasons so many went along was because this is the time when Paul was carrying that Asian contribution and from Macedonia and Achaia back to Jerusalem to meet the needs of the church there. And so by spreading it out over multiple different ones, it was easier to transport. It made it safer. And you had the accountability aspect, because with that many eyes, it's easier to keep track, make sure nothing gets spent out of ways. And so all of this is culminating. He's spent, we read about this contribution in multiple letters as well as the book of Acts. And that's getting wrapped up. And he comes back home and they get to Jerusalem. Let's see, look at verse 17. Let's just pick up there. It said, when we'd come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. When he'd greeted them, he told in detail those things which God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. When they heard it, they glorified the Lord. And now, read verse 20 carefully, because it's easy to miss one small detail. It says, and they said to him, you see, brother, how many myriads, literally thousands of Jews there are who have believed. They're all zealous for the law, but they've been informed about you, that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses. Now, what's that saying? We're used to Paul having a target on his back, right? Every time you turn around, seems like he is, to go back to where I started, stirring up a ruckus. Where do you not expect him to have a target on his back? Among the Gentiles, well, the unbelieving Gentiles, yeah, Paul drives them crazy because he costs them money. What about the unbelieving Jews? Would he have a target on his back with them? Always. Huge. He's a walking target. But what about the believing Jews? Interesting wrinkle here. Huh? What do you mean? Yeah, but back up. What does it say? The many myriads of Jews they haven't given up their zeal for the law. That's true. But he's talking about Christians, the church in Jerusalem. And so the last time Paul was there was, at least the last time we've given any details, is back in Acts 15. In Acts 15, there was this big, bang, 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 and they finally hammered it out, and the decision of the church was that the Gentiles were not going to be bound by the law of Moses. That was the last time we're given any detail about Paul being in Jerusalem. Now here we are, 6 chapters later, and he comes back. And during that time, some things seem to have changed in Jerusalem. For one thing, you see any apostles there? I know James is. Some argue, yes, he's an apostle. Some, no, the language is different. Let's pretend. Do you see any of the original 12 apostles listed there? Now, what does that tell you? If Paul's come back to the church in Jerusalem, and the only one that we know by name is James, and he wasn't part of the original 12, what does that say about the rest of the apostles? They're scattered. They're not present. If they were present, they'd be part of this meeting. And so maybe they're out doing other missionary work, different activities. But the leadership of the church is James and the elders now, and we're talking about it's still a massive church, thousands of Jews who've believed. They're getting reports back probably from other like-minded, maybe brethren, maybe false brethren. They're getting reports back that Paul is doing everything he can to undermine anything about the Old Testament when it comes to Jews. Now, what's the first thing? Go back to the beginning of chapter 16. What's the first thing Paul does following the Jerusalem conference after he and Barnabas split? What's the first thing he does? He has Timothy circumcised. Why? He's half Jew. Trying to make sure there's no reason to give offense, so that no one can point and say you're not doing this, and that becomes a barrier to them hearing the gospel. And so he doesn't want to give an offense, has Timothy circumcised. His actions are not what's being reported back. They're getting back the rumors and the half-truths. And apparently they're getting back those rumors and half-truths, not from unbelieving Jews, because they're already hostile to Christians. In Jerusalem, yeah, I think they'd still be hostile to Christians. So as far as I can tell, they're getting the message back from the circle of believing Jews, whether, again, genuine or not. We won't argue that one right now, because we know there's Judaizing teachers that go out and trouble the church a lot. So the church is having issues because they are looking at Paul with a suspect eye. As a matter of fact, it sounds like they're pretty well convinced. And he says, James and the leadership are going, we need to try and circumvent this. So he comes in, and again, a Paul, P-A-U-L type job. He comes in, and James and the elders see the potential for a ruckus to start. First time the doors open on Sunday morning in the church building. I know they don't have a church building. You know, we're just go with me on this. They're seeing chaos could erupt. They're going to see Paul's there, and they're going to think, okay, this is what we've been told, this is what we've been told. And listen to how bad it is. It says, they're all zealous for the law, verse 21. They've been informed about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying they ought not to circumcise their children, nor to walk according to the customs. It's not enough to say, well, Paul's not teaching the law the way we like it. They're accusing him of teaching the absolute counter to that. And you don't find that in Paul's writings. He talks to the Gentiles and he says, no, don't become circumcised. That's been consistent. But you don't see him going in and talking to Timothy's mom and saying, listen, you really shouldn't circumcise him, because that's the accusation are far-fetched. They could have found something a little more accurate, I think. So don't circumcise your children. Don't walk according to the customs. In other words, Paul's thrown out the baby with the bathwater. That's one of the things Luke is going to do, and he has been doing, is show, no, that's carrying it way to the extreme. Well, let's see. Let's compare. Who's got the NIV? Okay. Our customs. New King James says the customs. I can't tell you because I don't have the Greek in front of me. I would assume the is accurate just because NIV makes it a little more adjustment, but don't hold me to that, okay? But basically, they're accusing Paul of taking everything from his Jewish history and just tossing it out the window. Now, does Paul believe it's okay to eat all things? Yes, he'll tell the Romans that. That's not a problem. Does that mean that if Paul's sitting down with a Jewish family, he's going to flaunt that dietary freedom? No. How do we know that? He said so. Where? Well, you know, I know. 1 Corinthians 9. Look there just for a minute. Because 1 Corinthians 9 explains a lot of what you're going to see in the next few chapters. You know the passage, but I just want you to see it again, just to keep this in mind. And remember that this letter was written before Paul gets back to Jerusalem. Let's see. Start reading. Let's start in verse 19 because this talks about his principle. It says, "For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. To the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak." And here's his principle. "I've become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some." That goes a long way into explaining how this is all going to unfold in front of us. Because I can't help but see Paul working with that principle all the way through this. And so the accusations are way far-fetched. They come up with their suggestion. Go back to Acts 21, verse 22. Basically, he says, what should we do? Well, let's do this. "The assembly must certainly meet, for they will hear that you have come." And they're trying to do this before the church gathers, before everybody comes together, and Paul's put on the spot, and probably already from a negative or a hostile perspective, which just seems to be something Paul attracts everywhere he goes. He says, so let's do a preemptive strike. He says, "Therefore do what we tell you. We have 4 men who've taken a vow." And this is probably the Nazarite vow back from number 6. He says, "Take them, be purified with them, pay their expenses so that they may shave their heads, that all may know that those things of which they were informed concerning you are nothing, but that you yourself also walk orderly and keep the law. Concerning the Gentiles who believe, we've written and decided that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, from things strangled, from sexual immorality." By the way, it's the 3rd time Luke repeats that same finding in the book of Acts. So that was a very important statement there. So Paul does. Now, if you were talking about the elders of the church in Jerusalem, and you were talking about Paul, who would you say had the greatest authority? Let's just be general on this. Who would you say has the greater authority? Paul, right? Why? He's an apostle. The apostles were the I hate to use, the top of the food chain. They were under the Lord, and they're the ones he used to put it in order. Paul has the authority, basically, I think, even over James. Again, if you hold James as an apostle, then we put him on an even plane. But certainly with the elders. So why does he do this? They give him instruction. Verse 26, Paul follows their instruction. Why? Do all things for all men, right? That's what's going on here. He wants to his heart hasn't changed. It says, Paul took the men the next day, having been purified with them, entered the temple to announce the expiration of the days of purification, which time an offering should be made for each one of them. When the 7 days were almost ended, so that these guys have almost got to finish their vow, and then these folks show up. The Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against the people, the law, and this place." And here we are again with these far-fetched accusations. Furthermore, he also brought Greeks into the temple, has defiled this holy place. For they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian with him in the city, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple. Now, what's one theory about why Luke writes Acts? Yes, he's inspired by the Spirit, I understand that, but what's one of the theories that a lot of scholars suggest, and I think there's something to be said about it? The purpose of writing it. Remember? at Rome. What is the big no-no in the Roman law? Just about anyone. They all demand what? Civility, peace, the Pax Romana. And one of the things that Luke does consistently, to be fair, he does show that Paul is a spark plug for violating this, but he's never the one at fault. And Luke is real careful to back this up, not just with his own statements, but to back it up with evidence. We'll see that as we go through here. And so the first thing they do, they say, Paul's defiled the temple, and so they grab Paul, they drag him out, they slam the door shut so there's no more room to let anybody get in. Now that's just the doors to the court of the Jewish males, okay? That's the sacred part. They did business and everything else out in the court of the Gentiles, and evidently they're beating Paul in the court of the Gentiles. So they run together. It takes only a spark, and boy, the city just erupts like crazy. And, you know, you look at the Middle East, even today, it's not that hard to envision that, you know? I mean, it just doesn't take, I love that shirt. I had just seen it, the Missouri. That's what, yeah. Okay. All it takes, I know, hey, rabbit, okay. Okay, where was it? Oh, it's a tinderbox many times. And that's one of the reasons that the Romans were, somebody was talking about, I was talking to somebody that the trip to the Promise the other night was the first time they'd gone to see it. Now, we've seen it, Cindy and I have seen it before, and I think they do a really neat job. But one of the things that he couldn't get past was the way, you know, they'd be performing the songs and what have you, and the Roman soldiers would just walk right in front of them and walk right through them and just not give them any mind, and you better get out of their way. And he went, is that really the way it was? Yeah, that's the way it was. Oh, no. But they also didn't pay any allegiance or attention to the people. Their job was one thing and one thing only, and that was to keep the peace. And they knew that this was a very volatile culture. In some cultures, I'm sure they could have been a little more reserved, perhaps, but you didn't do that here, because this was, it only took like that, and suddenly it would just explode, as is evidence here. This is not unique to Paul. This is actually describes the culture pretty well at that time anyway.
From their provinces. That's not Israel, or that whole region there.
Yeah, not even close.
There were parts that went around, like, you know, where Ephesus was, Asia Minor. Those were parts of the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
This was a conquered area, so.
And barely conquered that.
Well, I mean, there was always trouble, but a Roman soldier could do anything he wanted because it was a conquered people. It's like, you know, if he demands that he had the right to demand anybody along the road to carry his backpack and all his gear for a mile. And go the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
To not only go the mile that you're commanded to do, that you owe him to do, you go the extra mile to be the good example. Because you were nothing.
and they earned some of that disrespect and some of that hostility, I feel like. And I'm going to give, as you go through this, keep asking yourself, okay, who's the heroes of this story? Because they show up really quickly. Okay, let's see. All the city was disturbed, and the people ran together, seized Paul, dragged him out of the temple. Immediately the doors were shut. Now, as they were seeking to kill him, news came to the commander of the garrison that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. Okay, fortress of Antonia. is it on the northeast corner, I think it is, of the Temple Mount and the temple grounds. And so the court of the Gentiles, the fortress literally overlooked into the court of the Gentiles. They could see everything that went on in the temple grounds, even in the court of the males. But it overlooked it was built right on the wall, basically, of the court of the Gentiles. And they had two stairways that went down inside the court of the Gentiles. So it would be the same thing as having, if we were in Jerusalem, having a Roman guardhouse built up about yay high, higher than our ceiling, that had two stairways straight into our building, because they wanted to be ready and there in an instant when things happened. And that's what happened. They've got somebody watching on the wall. Their job is out for any commotion, anything that's get out of hand. This gets out of hand before it even starts, and immediately the soldiers stream down the stairs and march right into it. And when they march in, it says when they saw the commander and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. So he's laying on the back there, and somebody had him by the shirt and just wailing the fire out of him, and they see the Romans show up, and they go, okay, we'll stop. But that doesn't mean they took their eyes off of Paul. Okay, verse 33. Then the commander, New King James uses commander. I don't know if any of the translations uses the word tribune. I wish they would, because that's the actual word. That was somebody who was over centurions, and he generally commanded between 500 and 1,000 troops. But the Chosen series uses the word tribune. Well, that's what tribune means, technically. You're the commander over anywhere from 5 to 10 centurions and their 100 soldiers. So the tribune came near and took him, commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and he asked who he was and what he'd done. Now, this guy's going to ask that question multiple times before we're done with the story, okay? He asked who he was and what he had done. And some among the multitude cried one thing, and some among another. So, again, the crowd didn't know why they were there in the first place. Sounds a lot like Ephesus. Paul is just gifted. I'm telling you, this guy is gifted. It says, so when he could not ascertain the truth because of the tumult, he commanded him to be taken into the barracks. When he reached the stairs, verse 35, he had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the mob. Now, when the soldiers came down, the mob pacified. They stopped beating Paul, and they parted to let the commander get to him. They're really hostile. They're really worked up because they're actually trying to prevent the soldiers from exiting the temple precinct. So they've got to pick Paul up. Now that's a mob that's not even, at this point, not even showing any fear of the Roman soldiers, which was things were really about to get really bad. Verse 36, the multitude of the people followed after, crying out, away with him. And you know what? That sounds like something they said about Jesus. Same city. Back in John 19. Now, to this point, I'm sorry, if you've studied the book of Acts and you've watched Paul's ministry, you're going, okay, same chapter, different verse. Paul tries to do what's right. Somebody comes out and accuses him. Everything goes nuts, and the people start trying to kill him. It just, every time you turn around. Here's where it gets, in my mind, interesting. Paul's just been spared being beaten, and I picture him on the ground, somebody just wailing the fire out of him. The soldiers have picked him up, they've slapped chains on him, they've had to pick him up and carry him to the stairs to get him up out of reach of the mob. Now, if you've just been whooped and you know the hostility that's still right there, what's your first, what's the first thing you would naturally want to do? I'm kind of thinking, you know what, I could use a hot bath and a place to have a little peace and quiet. That's not what he does. And again, Ask yourself why. 37, as Paul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, "May I speak to you?" First surprise for the tribune. He replied, "Can you speak Greek? Are you not the Egyptian who came some time ago, stirred up a rebellion, led 4,000 Sicarii out into the wilderness?" And if you've watched The Chosen, you know that word. That's what the word literally is. Paul says, "I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city. I implore you, permit me to speak to the people." That wouldn't be my first inclination. I'll be honest. I want to go get my hot shower and a safe place and a soft bed because I'm going to lick my wounds. And that's not where Paul goes with it. By the way, this Egyptian that led the assassins out into the wilderness, Josephus also mentions him in his writings. And so the first shock to the tribune is he can speak Greek. He's not used to, I'm going to use the word, cultured people among the Jews, especially somebody that's being beaten by what are supposed to be pious people. You're in the temple precincts. You're in the court of the Gentiles. Those are supposed to be God people, and they're wailing the fire out of this guy. And so he assumes this really is an enemy of the people. He's in for a real education. Paul says, "No, I'm actually a Jew." And he's going, "Wait a minute. Jews were just beating you, and you're a Jew. Okay." He says, "I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city." It was a pretty important city. "And I implore you, permit me to speak to the people." Why? Why did he do that? Why does he turn around and want to address that? I don't think it's stopped the violence. He's safe from the violence at this point, right? Romans are taking him up to their. Now he's not safe from the Romans, but he's safe from the Jews. They can't get to him. Doug?
The crowd there.
Well, that's, well, is it
Primarily defending himself. I don't read it that way. Here's what I read. Now, he will defend himself. He will let them know that, no, what you've heard of me is not true. But I think down underneath it all, this is another example of him becoming all things to all men, that he might by all means save some. He owed that crowd nothing. They had just rejected him. And he turns around instead and tries to entreat them. Now, he doesn't get very far. But notice that he is going to make sure they've heard that Jesus is still alive. Which, that's the crux of the matter, right?
well,
Or Paul,
yes,
that is his message.
that is his message.
It's his chance also to refute the argument he's getting is about getting rid of the law, which is at the core of what they believe and how they live.
Right.
And he gets a chance to explain how they need to be thinking more openly about why.
What do you mean by more openly?
That it wasn't the end result that God was looking for, just to obey the law.
Yeah.
That's why that's the attitude they're looking at it, and he's about to explain it different.
He's about to try. They're not going to.
They won't hear him all the way out, but at least they do let him defend. Keep in mind, he's not defending himself against the believing Jews who had heard these things about him. This seems to be made up of the non-believing Jews primarily. Sure, there's some in the mix, but not everybody in the temple ground is going to be believers. Some of them are not. Yes, sir?
In the class on your lesson Sunday about the good intentions and actually going out and doing, and the point was made that we're commanded to plant seed. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily get to see the plant grow. We don't get to necessarily. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And we sometimes get disappointed because of that. But to me, this is a great example of Paul planting seeds.
He is for a fact. And we don't know anybody.
Even people that maybe he has no reason to like at all because
Exactly.
they got through beating him to death.
Yep.
Almost. And so that's just to me, that's a great example. I mean, doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Regardless.
No, there wasn't any good intentions there. It was just done.
You're right. No unfulfilled good intentions there. Okay. So he turns around to the people. Now, you got to give him some credit here because verse 40, when the tribune had given Paul permission, Paul stood on the stairs and motioned with his hand to the people, and this howling mob that was crying out for his blood goes silent. Part of it seems to be because he's talking to them, likely in Aramaic. I know that New King James says Hebrew language. It's probably Hebrew dialect. The common people would speak Aramaic, and we assume that's what he's using here. It says Aramaic? Good. Okay. I should have looked up that word to be sure. Okay, it says, spoke to them in their language, basically. Brethren and fathers, hear my defense before you now. When they heard that he spoke to them in the Hebrew dialect, they kept all the more silent. He said, I am indeed a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel. And that's a well-known, I mean, you drop that name, you've got some people's attention. Taught according to the strictness of our father's law, was zealous toward God as you all are today. I persecuted this way to the death, binding, delivering into prisons both men and women, as also the high priest bears me witness, and all the council of the elders. So he's calling in all of these other witnesses who they have to admit they gave him letters, from whom I received letters to the brethren, went to Damascus to bring in chains, even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished. Paul's basically saying, I was standing right where you are. You're just like I was. Verse 6, it happened, as I journeyed and came near Damascus at about noon, suddenly a great light from heaven shone around me. I fell to the ground, heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I answered, who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Those who were with me indeed saw the light, were afraid, but they did not hear the voice of him who spoke to me. I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, arise, go into Damascus. There you will be told all things which are appointed for you to do. Since I could not see for the glory of that light, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came into Damascus. Stop there. How many witnesses has Paul already pointed out in his story? He started with who? Gamaliel. First name out of the box. The people, if you're in the temple grounds, you should be at least relatively pious, relatively serious about the worship of your God. You're going to know Gamaliel, and you're going to respect him. As far as we know, he was maybe the preeminent teacher of that day. He said, Gamaliel can testify about me. The high priest has to bear me witness because I got letters from him and from the council of the elders. So the Sanhedrin. Paul's calling in all of these witnesses to say, you know what, I can defend myself. I can prove to you, if they'll tell the truth, I can prove to you from all of these that you know, that you respect, that you accept their word. And then he gets into the discussion about the others who were with him on the road to Damascus. So there were others with him there. They saw the light. They can testify that the Shekinah glory of God appeared, and Paul was struck blind. It's not a one-man story. He is bringing in all of these extra people to verify and to validate, saying, you know what, I can prove this story to you. I can prove what's going on here. And then he calls in verse 12, and it's the only time Ananias is described this way. It says, then a certain Ananias, a devout man according to the law. That's the only time it said that about him. But a devout man according to the law, having a good testimony with all the Jews who dwelt there, came to me, and he stood and said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. At that same hour I looked up at him. Then he said, the God of our fathers. Well, if you're standing in the temple of God, you know who the God of our fathers is. The temple represents him. The God of our fathers has chosen you, that you should know his will and see the just one and hear the voice of his mouth. For you will be his witness to all men of what you've seen and heard. And now, why are you waiting? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. It's a very important verse. I hope you have that marked in your Bible. We might go back to it in a minute, but I want to finish this, what's going on here. It says, now it happened, verse 17, when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple. So again, back in the temple. If Paul was in the temple praying, he was praying in the court of the Jewish males, the closest you can get to the building itself, the closest access. That's a place for pious male Jews. I mean, that is evidence of one who is committed and is serious about their faith. Generally, I'm not saying it always was, but it was supposed to be. And so he says, even when I got back here, I was in the temple, I was praying to God, and I went into this trance, verse 18. And I saw him, the last him that's referred to as name of the Lord or the just one. And I saw him saying to me, make haste, get out of Jerusalem quickly, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me. I said, Lord, they know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believe on you. When the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by, consenting, guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then he said to me, and you stop here again. If you're dealing with pious, especially if they're from the Pharisaic, because people were more likely to be in line with the Pharisees than the Sadducees. They were kind of the rich and the elite. If you're dealing with sincere, devoted people that are serious about the law and serious about God, and they have a Pharisaic perspective, they're going to be open to the idea of visions and supernatural beings appearing. This is the kind of thing that would appeal to, ideally, those that ran out of the temple proper. It would appeal to them. They would be listening to that and going, okay, well, there were witnesses to the light, and there's this voice, and he was in a trance in the temple, and suddenly he sees him and he hears him again, and everything. I think he had them right up to verse 21. He says, then he said to me, depart, for I will send you far from here to the Gentiles. And that's all it took. I'm sure Paul had a whole long sermon yet to preach. That wasn't going to happen. But he covered the bases. Jesus is alive. I'm an eyewitness. I've heard him. I've seen him. Others have heard him. Others have seen him. He is alive. He's raised from the dead. He got the core, to use Perry's word, he got the seed planted. We have no idea, anybody from this mob, what happened with that seed. But the seed was put. The seed was sown. Verse 22, and they listened to him, and I've got to watch the clock because, see, Ron had already set the clock back. I actually have another hour and 20 minutes to teach, but I'm probably not going to take advantage of that, just so you'll know. It says they listened to him until this word, verse 22. Then they raised their voices and said, away with such a fellow from the earth. He's not fit to live. As they cried out, tore off their clothes and threw dust into the air, the commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks, said that he should be examined under scourging so that he might know why they shouted so against him. Second time he's going to try and find the truth. He asked the mob. They didn't come up with an answer. Now he's going to ask Paul, not very nicely, but it was their normal way to do so until, and that's where we stop because you just can't break the rest of the story. You got to stop there. Okay? Yes, but I said a Paul type job, not what Ron heard.
Okay. Sweet, that's working. I was told 768. Yes. Okay, so you can turn your songbooks over to 768. That's where we'll be after the lesson. But, okay, he's not here. Okay, so yesterday was a holiday, right? Yesterday was Halloween. It was also Sid's birthday. Oh, he is here. I see him. You're in front of Leah. But hope you had a great Halloween and a great birthday, Sid. But thinking that it was Halloween yesterday, I figured we'd do Halloween-themed lesson in honor of it. And, as if you've been here Wednesday nights when I've done Devo, as most of you have been, you know that I like doing, story time about my life and previous younger me and what younger me liked to do. So we're going to do that again. But we're going to go to me as a kid and Halloween. So as a kid, I loved Halloween. I will say this, and you can yell at me, disagree with me all you want, but as a kid, Halloween was my favorite holiday. Yes, it was even more greater than Christmas. I will say that. But, there was just something about going out late at night. If you know me, I'm a night owl. I was like that as a kid. So going out late at night with family, especially with friends as I got older, and running around town and getting candy and staying up late. It was awesome. And then usually it was colder too. And as a kid, I liked the cold as well. So there was just so many things with Halloween that I just loved. It was a great time, and I just loved dressing up and running around. And I would say now I probably don't enjoy Halloween as much. I think Christmas has surpassed it as my favorite holiday, but that is only because society frowns upon the idea of adults running around in costumes and trick-or-treating, especially if you don't have kids. Apparently that's frowned upon with society, and that's my number one change for society right there is make trick-or-treating available to all ages and acceptable for all ages, right? But I loved Halloween. But the point of, or I guess let's go here. As a child, what did you guys dress up as? What do you guys dress up as? What do you dress up as? Huh? A doll? Riddler? Oh, wow, going deep into Batman villains. I love it. Joker, sweet, awesome, some Batman villains. As a Batman fan myself, I love it. But right, you guys dress up as the dolls and the princesses and the superheroes or super villains, right? I didn't do that. As a kid, I dressed up as the scariest thing imaginable, right? When I was able to start picking out my costumes for myself, I found the scariest thing I could, and I picked that. Because if you weren't scaring little kids on Halloween night, you weren't doing Halloween right. At least that was in my mind. Some of my parents may or may not agree with that statement. There was a couple moms at Trunk or Treat that I may or may not have upset in my youth because I was maybe making their kids scared. But, right, that's how I figured Halloween was meant to be. It's spooky season, right? We're supposed to be scary. So that's what I did as a kid. I picked the scariest costume, and I went around town and trick-or-treated in that. But the point that I'm want to get at with Halloween and make this connection is the idea and theme of Halloween, the main goal is, dressing up and running around town as something you're not, right? As being something you're not, being a doll, being the Riddler, being the Joker, being whatever scary thing I could imagine that holiday season, right? And while I was thinking of this idea of being something you're not, it reminded me of the Greek word hypocrisis. And this is where we get the English translation hypocrisy or hypocrite. And the Greek word was usually used to describe an actor or someone playing a part on stage. And the definition that we took from that was someone pretending to be something they're not. And so what I want to talk about tonight is probably the most dangerous, one of the most dangerous weapons against the church. And that is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy has probably been one of the most dangerous weapons it is now, and it has been in the past while the church was even being set up, right? But I want to say that it's even more so in today's generation. It's even more dangerous in today's generation because I believe that hypocrisy is one of the many different reasons we're seeing so many young people, so many of my generation, the younger generation over here, leave the church. Because the younger generation, if you guys don't know this about my generation, the younger generation is very big on the idea of being true or being real, being a real person. And what this means is that someone's not going around, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about, but not going around putting on a false face, not being fake. You know, no matter what you're doing, as long as you're real about it, as long as you're not being deceptive about who you are as a person, my generation has more respect for that. And so my generation and the younger generation hates this idea of hypocrites. We really do. We really do not like when we see someone doing something or professing something and doing something completely opposite than what they're professing. You know, and unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of hypocrites within the church. And I'm not saying, you know, this church, right? I'm not necessarily calling out this, but I'm talking about Christianity in general. The entire faith of Christianity, churches around the world, denominations around the world, we are seeing hypocrites. We're seeing people who go into church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday nights, they profess God, they profess Christ, but then they go out into the world and they act hateful. They act selfish. They're cruel to other people, and people see this. My generation sees this, and they have nothing. They want nothing to do with the God we serve because of those that serve Him. And is that the way that it should be, right? Nobody should really judge our God based upon His servants, but it's how it is. And God and the apostles and those that wrote the Bible knew that was how human psychology worked, that people would judge Christ based upon Christians' actions. You know, unfortunately, I hate this statistic, but it's very true statistic, and you've probably seen this happen. But the most hated time for waiters and waitresses at restaurants is Sunday afternoon shift. It is, and I've been there. I've dealt with that in fast food, and it's unfortunate the reason why, because that's when they have to deal with the Sunday after church crowd. The crowd that is known to be the rudest, most impatient crowd restaurants have to deal with. Guys, that's us. That's the church crowd right there. And I'm not calling out my group that I go to Sunday morning with. We are pretty good on this aspect, but I've seen it. I've been to groups that have been like that, and you've probably seen it yourself. I've waited. I've taken orders for people after church that were exactly like that. People see that. People see the way those people act. They know what they're associated with. They're associated with us. They're associated with church. They're associated with Christ. And they see that, and they think to themselves, well, if that's how Christians act, if Christians are this mean, impatient, selfish people, when I'm waiting for them, I don't want to even touch their religion. Right? And so that's what I want to get in tonight. I want to remind us tonight of how important our actions are. Because someone's watching, whether we like it or not, right? We tell the older people, the older kids, right? Especially those that have siblings, right? Brace and Caden, I'm sure you guys are told many times, you know, you are the example for your little brothers, and, you know, be the good example. That goes for us too. Even if we don't have siblings, we are the example for other people. We are the example for, I guess if you want to think of it, those that are spiritually younger than us, right? We are their example. So what example are we giving those people? Are we giving them an example that they don't want to even see God, An example that shows that, oh, God is in Christ are these terrible, selfish people. Or are we giving them a true example of Christ? Are we showing them Christ's love, Christ's kindness, it's grace, it's mercy, it's patience, right? My after church Sunday morning crowd, it's patience. What are we showing to those that are spiritually younger than us? To those that may or may not even know who Christ is? So, don't be a hypocrite, right? Easier said than done. But live a life that is like Christ showed us. Live a life that professes the words and professes the actions that Christ took. You know, if you're struggling with this, with making your outside life look like the one that's in here, and if you're struggling with that, or if you're ready to start living a life in Christ, and you want to be baptized tonight, won't you come as we sing?
Jesus, let us come to know you. Let us see you face to face. Touch us, hold us, use us, mold us. Only let us live in you. Jesus, draw us ever nearer. Hold us in your loving arms. Wrap us in your gentle presence. When the end comes, bring us home.
November isn't nearly as packed as October was. I'm okay with that. Let's see. It says November, December will be sack to pantry items for Helping Hands for Jesus. And if you didn't see it, there's a set up the table and everything out there with the sacks. We moved them for this last weekend, but they're back out there. And then teacher sign-up sheets are in the fall quarter, and there's still a few slots that haven't been filled in. Saturday, November 4th, beginning at 8 a.m., outdoor work day here. And I know we've got to do some more work on the flower bed out front. And then, as of right now, there's a congregational wedding shower. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's y'all's. We're waiting to see, right? Depending on whether you, okay. But hopefully, this Saturday, they'll be getting married. And then on the 12th, there's a congregational wedding shower and luncheon honoring Paige Woodard and Ben Kissinger after service on Sunday morning. November 11th, the Burleson PD, the men's safety training, Bill Kashub. And Bambi, do you still have tickets for Santa's Helpers? Okay, you're the only one because the rest of us have sold out. So thank you for. She got more. She's doing good. She's an overachiever, okay? But we appreciate the support and see her if you haven't got your tickets yet. Okay, and also we've started taking donations at the bank next door for the auction. So if you've got something you want to share with that, you can get it to me, drop it off at the bank. The table's set up and it's ready to go. Okay, in our prayer list, yes, sir. Oh, y'all are having, I didn't, it's not under youth news. So, yes. That's right. Oh, yes, that's true. Okay. See, now let me make sure it's not on here because Lisa will go, I put it right on there. Nope. This time I was right for a change. Daylight savings time, fall back. Tonight I actually had an extra hour to teach because Ron had already changed that clock, but I decided not to take it. So, okay, here's our prayer list. Carolyn Curitan, we announced Sunday she broke her other hip. It said broke under normal pressure. She didn't even fall; it just broke. She was in the hospital downtown, but she's already been moved to Encompass Rehab on Sunday. Barbara, where is Encompass? Is that the one up there in? Okay. Okay, I couldn't remember exactly where it was, but anyway, Oakmont, that's it. And then John Job, they took him to the hospital yesterday, very confused, wasn't recognized his surroundings. They got back home, and he's still having a lot of trouble with confusion. They're trying to decide if it's medicine related or if it's an advance in something going on inside. So keep John and Susan in your prayers. And if you can drive a standard truck and have a little bit of time, his truck needs to be driven 50 miles before it can go back and be inspected again because they changed the battery. And I drove it about, I think I've driven it 20. So anybody who's got time to run it another 20 or 30 miles, I'm sure that would help. Okay, Donna Gray will soon start pinpoint radiation on one spot on her brain. She got fitted for a new mask today. Sam Davis had his first cataract surgery today. The second one's on the 8th. We're still praying for Scott Knox. Perry, your mom gaining ground? Okay. Excellent. Okay, we can do that. Keep Andy Farmer in your prayers for some of the tests he's undergoing. Little Charlie Throckmorton is improving, but still in NICU and needs our prayers. Let's see, Loretta Taylor's still very weak and has CHF. She's homebound and very discouraged. And then Floyd Remington wasn't feeling well today. So anybody else we need to add? Yes, sir.
My mom is having the bowel surgery.
Okay.
Tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, just prayers for her that goes all right, and starting at 4:30 in the morning. So,
Oh.
Or she has to.
Yeah, it has to be there. Yeah.
4:30 in the morning. So prayers that she can get some kind of rest tonight and have some comfort. And then also prayers for my dad because he has to wait at the hospital. Yeah, he asked her. He was like, "Can I go to work while you're doing this?" No, what if I die? And she's like, "Well, I can't do anything."
Oh, that's good.
so he's gonna sit there and maybe have some friends come and hang out with him.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous, man. I learned better than that. Yep. Yes, sir. Wow. 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 Anybody else? Tom, how would you like to dismiss us tonight? Let's stand, church.
God, as we leave tonight, I pray you'll be with us and keep us safe. We're grateful for a time we've been able to spend here tonight with our brothers and sisters and to get to study your word. Pray, God, that things that we have learned tonight we might put into practice in our lives so that we can better serve you and be an influence to those that are about us. God, we've mentioned many tonight that are on our prayer list that we pray for due to health concerns, friends of those that we know. And God, I just pray that you will be with all of those that we have mentioned tonight, that you'll